expect, and they're both hopefully now on the road to recovery. But the recently departed honourable member had a different idea that we should have an insurance-based health policy and a Wittgenstein policy. And that family, whose cost would have been $1.2 million, would have been crucified financially by what happened. Yeah. So will the Prime Minister take the opportunity to say that our principles on the NHS are that it's universal for everybody?
Explore Sunday hotels on the OYO website. Discover Sunday stays in London, Staines, Warwickshire and across 18 cities in the UK. Enjoy a spa, indoor swimming pool and restaurant bar. Get an extra 10% off exclusively on the OYO website.
Free at the point of, Mr. Speaker, we inherited an NHS on its knees, but we are seeing progress. Waiting lists are down. Patient satisfaction is improving. We got the best ambulance response times for half a decade. There's much more to do, but we're delivering the investment that's needed, and it was opposed by who? The Tories and the now departed Reform.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent
which we all value enormously.
In just a moment, we will take you live to the Commons for Prime Minister's questions. Waiting for the Prime Minister to stand up. Let's bring in our deputy, who joins me now. What do we expect, Sam, the Prime Minister, to be grilled on today by the Leader of the Opposition?
Well, there are issues that range politics and the impact that's going on in Iran, in Britain, everything from fuel prices to whether or not we think we're any closer to resolution, down to some really kind of issues, down and dirty politics on at the moment. The saga of what happened to his phone. It appears his phone stolen, but just a matter of weeks after Peter Mandelson resigned, on that phone would have been messages between him and Peter Mandelson, and now it appears that phone around that time was stolen in the last few moments. This before the Metropolitan Police releasing a transcript of the call between Morgan and the Metropolitan Police at 999 October the 20th. All of that getting quite leads of an issue that really comes to actually, if you pull it out, it's about trust and politics and touches to. There's also a big review that in the last few minutes published just into foreign interference in domestic. All of those things could be on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. An attack on Britain's Jewish community is an attack on all of us. And, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to say that London ambulances have now replaced the Hatzola ambulances and that the NHS will pay for the permanent replacements. We're also accelerating our social cohesion plan to strengthen our British values of tolerance, decency and respect. Mr. Speaker, we're also strengthening our communities by extending Pride in Place, announcing the locations of 7 new towns and delivering over 300 new school-based nurseries. This is investment in our high streets, more homes and action to support working people with the cost of living. Mr. Speaker, today we will also celebrate the installation of the new Archbishop of Canterbury. It's a key role in our national life, and I wish her every success. This morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to thank the Prime Minister for the £47 million that this government has given to Lancashire County Council to repair potholes. However, my constituents still feel like they need a moon buggy to navigate the streets of Lancashire. So would you agree with me that the reform councillors at Lancashire County Council are clearly wired to the moon if they think they're making effective use of this £47 million?
Well, can I extend my sympathy to residents in Lancashire who have been utterly failed by their reform county council? And, Mr Speaker, it's the same picture across the country. In Kent, Reform are cutting social care. In Worcestershire, they're hiking council tax by 9%, despite promising lower taxes. In Staffordshire, the scandals and infighting have been so bad, the Reform are on their fourth leader in 11 months. It's a warning to the whole country. Reform have nothing to offer.
He has a duty to this House, Mr Speaker, to answer the question. Let's see if he can do better this week. I'll start with a simple one. Will the Prime Minister approve the licences for Rosebank and Jackdaw gas fields in the North Sea?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, under statute, that is a matter for the Secretary of State, as she knows, because it's the same arrangements that were in place under the last government. Licences were granted. They were then struck down because of the defects in the process of the last government. But, Mr Speaker, oil and gas is coming out of the North Sea 24/7. It will be part of the energy mix for many years to come. We fully support all existing oil and gas fields throughout their lifespan, and in November we made changes to extend to allow neighbouring fields to be exploited. But we need to take control of our energy prices. The only way to do that is through renewables. The party opposite used to make that argument. One of their senior figures in 22 said this: it's investment in nuclear and renewables that will reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and keep our consumer costs down. Who was that senior figure? The Leader of the Opposition.
This is not the day to be thrown out with a 2-week break coming. Come in bed.
Mr Speaker, we can have renewables and oil and gas. He says it's a matter for the Secretary of State. He says it's a matter for the Secretary of State. I thought he was the Prime Minister, and he loves to hide behind legal process every single time. I wonder, Mr Speaker, what a Director of Public... What? Have
Order. Mr Yazin, you don't want to test my patience, I'm sure. Come back.
Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister loves to hide behind legal process. I wonder what a Director of Public Prosecutions would make of the defence. Sorry, I can't produce my WhatsApps. My phone's been stolen. The Jackdaw gas field could be up and running before winter. All that gas would be used here in the UK to heat 1.6 million homes. That is enough to power Norfolk, Suffolk and Essex put together. So will the Prime Minister approve the licences, or is the Energy Secretary running the government?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, legislation has been passed. It's absolutely clear that the quasi-judicial duty under legislation rests with the Secretary of State. I really think, if she's going to put this challenge to me, she needs to read the legislation. That is the legislation that they applied for 14 years. It's exactly the legislation that they used to put the licences in place, which were then struck down because the process was defective. But, Mr Speaker, let's be clear. When Russia invaded Ukraine, energy prices doubled. The 12-day war, oil prices hit £100 a barrel. In the last 4 weeks, because we're on the fossil fuel roller coaster, everybody has been held to ransom. The only way forward is to go further and faster on renewables. And the leader... Mr Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition's approach is to outsource our foreign policy and let the US decide whether we go to war, to outsource outsource our energy policy to Russia and Iran and let them set the price of energy. I will never do that because it's not in the British national interest.
Mr. Speaker, he is hiding behind so many people. He is the Prime Minister. He can make this decision today. He can. He can. He is so weak, he's the first person to be pushed around by the Energy Secretary. Let me remind him, Mr. Speaker, let me remind him who is on my side. The unions, yes, GMB, they're on my side. Tony Blair. Mr. Speaker, Renewable UK, the very people that he's talking about, they are saying drill in the North Sea. Centrica, Octopus Energy, even Labour MPs. Yeah. Let me quote the Labour member for Pembrokeshire who says, offshoring our carbon emissions might give a sense of moral superiority, but it is simply impoverishing our communities. Yeah. We agree. So why does the Prime Minister think he knows better than everyone else?
I'm going to have one more go. The legislation, the statute, the law prescribes the decision maker. They know that. They should be embarrassed that she doesn't even... She's attacking me without having read the legislation. The legislation sets out who the decision maker is. It's the Secretary of State. It is not the Prime Minister. It has to be the Secretary of State, and it's a quasi-judicial process, exactly the process that they ran for many years. And, Mr. Speaker, oil and gas is part of the mix for many years to come, but we do need to get onto renewables. But, Mr. Speaker, we're discussing this because of the war. We need to de-escalate. And that is, yes, we are. That is why I stuck to my principles not to join the war and to act in collective self-defence. I appreciate the Leader of the Opposition doesn't get that. She wanted to jump into the war without regard to the consequences and then do a mother of all U-turns, and now she's stranded without a thought-through position. And, Mr. Speaker, when she was asked at the weekend whether she approved of the war, she said, that's a difficult one. It certainly is if you've got absolutely no judgment.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to let the Prime Minister in on a secret. He's the Prime Minister. He can change the legislation. Hiding behind the Energy Secretary is pathetic. Mr. Speaker, under his Labour government, we buy half the gas we use from Norway. Last year, Norway's Labour, 49 wells in the North Sea. That's what Norway's Labour government did. How many did Britain drill? 0. For the first time since 1964, under his government, Britain drilled no wells. Why is energy security the right policy for Labour in Norway, but the wrong policy for Labour in Britain?
Mr. Speaker, so now our attack is if you changed and passed some different law, you could take the decision, which she's challenging me today for not taking. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, all that would do is to slow the process down. Oil and gas is coming out every day. There's a mix of that and renewables. But it's really important, Mr. Speaker, the most important thing to get energy security is to ensure we de-escalate this war. I know where I stand on this. We are not joining the war. She wanted to join the war. She didn't think through the consequences, and now she doesn't know where she stands on the most important issue facing this country at this time.
Mr. Speaker, the Norwegian Prime Minister is doing what is right for his country. If only our Prime Minister would do the same. Stopping all new drilling in the North Sea was a reckless promise when he made it before the election. In the middle of a global energy crisis, it is catastrophic. Experts are predicting a £300 rise in bills in July. Approving new licences would show he was serious about cutting bills. Why won't he do it?
Mr. Speaker, because of the action that we've taken, bills are coming down by up to £100 household bills next month. Then they will be capped for 3 months. That's what we're doing to protect households across the country. And who voted against it? The Tories and Reform, because they just don't get the impact on working people that we will protect.
Mr. Speaker, he says bills are coming down. They are higher than they were when he came into office. And he's talking about, he's talking about what they're doing to help with energy bills. Families and businesses will suffer from the spike in energy costs because of his decisions. He could abolish the green taxes on their bills. He could stop the fuel duty rise. We could drill our own gas in the North Sea. What's he doing? He is planning another giveaway to people on welfare. Yet again, he's taking money from those who do work to give to those who don't. First, we had the budget for Benefit Street. Now it's the bailout for Benefit Street. Doesn't this just prove that they've given up being the Labour Party and they're now just the welfare party?
Mr. Speaker, the spike... they're the ones that double spend on welfare, Mr. Speaker. They're the ones with a broken system. And when we tried to mend it, what did they do? They voted against it.
Order. Mr. Dewhurst, you're tempting my patience. Thank you, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, she talks about the spike in energy prices. That's because of the war, which I say we shouldn't join, and she says we should join without following through on the consequences. And time again, she gets the big calls absolutely wrong. She wanted to drag us into the war. She got that wrong. She opposed taking control of energy security, and she got that wrong. She opposed our decision to cut energy bills, and she got that wrong. She seriously thinks that'll make her relevant, and she's got that wrong.
Debbie Abrams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Prime Minister for the new funding for 3 new primary school nurseries in Oldham? But can I ask him specifically about Monday's liaison committee, when he agreed that Israeli settlements in the West Bank are unlawful and that their expansion threatens the viability of a Palestinian state? Will he confirm, as he said he would, that any potential bidder for E1 contracts from the UK knows that this is unlawful? And will he set out exactly what will happen as a consequence?
Mr. Speaker, let me do that. The Israeli settlements, including the E1 settlement, are a flagrant breach of international law and threaten the viability of the two-state solution. That's why, alongside international partners, we've sanctioned those responsible and their supporters who incite violence. We've consistently urged the Israeli government to act to stop these incidents. We also recommend that settlement products are labelled so that consumers are informed, and will continue to take the necessary action to defend Palestinians and protect the two-state solution.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks about Monday's despicable attacks on the Jewish community? Anti-Semitism has no place in our society, and given the potential links with the IRGC, I hope the government will move faster to prescribe them as terrorists. And Mr. Speaker, as a former Secretary of State for Energy who granted licences for oil and gas exploration, can I make a judgment on this argument? The Prime Minister is actually right, and the lead opposition is wrong. Mr. Speaker, the law is clear, and I believe in the rule of law. Mr. Speaker, just before President Trump posted about his supposed negotiations with Iran on Monday, traders made hundreds of millions of dollars of extra bets on oil futures. This looks like Donald Trump giving his mates insider information so they can make themselves richer, while his illegal war in Iran makes everyone else poorer. This looks like corruption of the very worst kind. Does the Prime Minister share my fear that Trump is making his war decisions based on what enriches himself and his friends rather than what makes peace in the Middle East?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I thank him for his verdict? At least he's read the law that she obviously hasn't read. But, Mr. Speaker, in relation to the traders, we've seen the activity there. What I can say is that all of my decisions are based in the best interests of our country, and that's why I've decided that we will not get dragged into the war, unlike the Leader of the Opposition, and I've decided we will act in collective self-defence of ourselves and our allies. And so I comment on my actions, and they're the principles behind my actions.
Sir Ed Davey.
Mr. Speaker, if Trump's war pushes up energy bills by £500, the Chancellor's very narrow plan simply won't cut it. And while I don't fall for the crocodile tears of the leader of the Conservatives, who cheered on this illegal war without a thought for the impact on people's energy bills, and the government is right to reject repeating Liz Truss's blanket cheque approach. But, Mr. Speaker, the government can't ignore the millions of families who don't get benefits, who already face a cost of living crisis. So can the Prime Minister at least guarantee to all those families and pensioners that he won't let their energy bills go up by £500 this year?
Let me say my verdict. He's right about the Leader of the Opposition wanting to join the war, and she's wrong about that. At least he's read the legislation that I'm being challenged on.
Whoa.
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
Impossible. Nina can't code. Interesting. Can it generate reports?
It can now.
Nice. So you're saying we can all build apps now?
Yeah.
I'm on lunch. I gotta make a call.
I'll be right
in my
back.
office.
Just built an inventory tracker.
Protein calculator.
Book sharing app.
A workflow manager. That's
Tracks who still owes for the group lunch.
Trash duty schedule. Since no one seems to care.
Just built a
Sorry, people.
system.
We built the same thing,
didn't we?
Yep. Can this thing manage content? Is this SOC 2 compliant?
I want to animate this graph. Create a party planner.
Profesor de español.
An inter-office
Is that
dating
working?
app.
Go back a bit.
Associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks on the terrible
Yes.
Golders Green attacks.
Truss's blanket cheque approach. But, Mr. Speaker, or the millions of families who don't get benefits, who already face a cost of living crisis. So can the Prime Minister at least guarantee to all those families and pensioners that he won't let their energy bills go up by £500 this year?
Let me say my verdict. He's right about the Leader of the Opposition wanting to join the war, and she's wrong about that. At least he's read the legislation that I'm being challenged on. It does help. It does help. At least he's right. It was the leader of their party that said, let's all go to war without thinking through the consequences. We're now discussing the consequences. Mr. Speaker, in relation to the support, we've made clear the principles, the approach we'll take. We'll keep this under careful review. Energy bills for households are frozen until are capped until the end of June. It's really important I make clear that that's whatever happens in the conflict, because I know the public are concerned about that. We will then put in place appropriate support and look at how we put the principles behind it.
Durham Paffey. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks on the terrible Golders Green attacks? Mr. Speaker, rebuilding trust and integrity in our democracy matters deeply to my constituents in Southampton. Shamefully, it doesn't matter at all to some, particularly the senior Reform UK politician who has been convicted of taking bribes from Russia. Does the Prime Minister agree that there has never been a more urgent need to defend our country from hostile forces who would try to undermine our democracy, and will he set out what concrete steps he is taking to crack down on foreign interference in British politics?
Prime Minister. And I thank my honourable friend. He makes a powerful point. Mr. Speaker, the Communities Secretary will make a statement later on the Rycroft review, which sets out the stark threats posed by illicit finance. I can tell the House we will act decisively to protect our democracy. That will include a moratorium on all political donations made through cryptocurrencies. I hope that will be welcomed across the House. There is only one party leader who has shown he will say anything, no matter how divisive, if he's paid to do so.
Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Smash the gangs. That is what the Prime Minister promised us. Trust me, I will stop the boats from coming. But 70,000 later, and 1,000 in the last week, and too many young men that pose a threat to national security, is it not time to admit Smash the Gangs has been a total abject failure, along, frankly, with most of his other policies? Isn't it now time, he told us, as summer approaches, what is Plan B?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, this is from the man and the party that voted against giving law enforcement counter-terrorism-style powers to tackle them. So he wants the grievance, he doesn't want it sorted. And he has absolutely no judgment. He again said, let's join the war, let's all go to war. I want to make it perfectly clear he wants the war. A week later, screeching U-turn, we don't want to go to war. And he says, trust his judgment. Mr. Speaker, it's hard to take anything he says seriously. He promised lower tax, and now Reform councils are hiking council tax by 9%. In Worcestershire, this is what he said about Worcestershire. He said, we took control of a virtually bankrupt council. I wish we hadn't bothered. He asked for people's votes, and then he abandons them. Reform don't want to solve problems, they only want to exploit them. I am thankful for the opportunity to change this country for the better. He says he wish he hadn't bothered winning councils, because they're an absolute disgrace.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Prime Minister for the £35 million of funding announced this week to transform Crucible Theatre and keep the world's
I want to hear this member's question, especially those who are interested in snooker. Dr. Rachel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Prime Minister for the £35 million of funding announced this week to transform the Crucible Theatre and keep the World Snooker Championship at the heart of Sheffield? I want my constituents to be able to enjoy this fantastic tournament day and night, travelling by tram train from Stocksbridge to Sheffield via Outerbridge, Warncliffe Side and Deepcar. I'm grateful for our South Yorkshire Mayor, Oliver Coppard, for kick-starting these plans. Will the Prime Minister work with me and the South Yorkshire Mayor to ensure we get spades in the ground for a tram train extension to Stocksbridge as soon as possible so my constituents can enjoy the snooker?
Mr. Speaker, I see Reform have walked out. They obviously realise they're absolutely snookered. Mr. Speaker.
No, I don't think so.
Sheffield and the Crucible Theatre are the beating heart of snooker, and I am delighted that we'll host the World Snooker Championships for many years to come, because this is what Labour stands for, investing in things that make us proud of the places that we live. Can I reassure my honourable friend we're working closely with South Yorkshire Combined Authority on better transport links, providing over £1.4 billion to spend on their priorities, which could include a new tram fleet, more modern stops or deliver extensions.
Why are you handing over 40% of your profit to HMRC every single year?
choice.
You have worked hard to
Hotel in Melrose, which we run as part of a family business of 10 hotels across Scotland. They employ over 250 people, but their national insurance bill is going up by £288,000 because of Labour's tax on jobs. We need to get Britain working again, but this government's policies are doing the opposite. Does the Prime Minister understand the damage that he is doing to our economy, and how does he expect businesses like this to survive?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the steps we've taken have been to repair the damage that was done by the previous government. And we took those steps, and the spring statement showed the results of those steps. Inflation coming down, interest rates coming down, and the economy stabilised. I know they don't understand that because they blew up the economy in the first place.
Just give him
Tony Antoniazzi.
Mr Speaker, my constituents Tony and Rebecca Wadley received insulation under the Tory government's Eco4 scheme, but the work left their home with black mould, leaks, damp and even a solar fire, damage now requiring £100,000 worth of repairs. Rebecca is suicidal, Tony has had pneumonia, their asthmatic son cannot live at home, and like many others they are required under the rules to use the same contractor responsible for the faulty work, only up to £20,000. Now, will the Prime Minister commit to overhauling this broken system so that my constituents and many others can receive fully funded repairs carried out by a competent builder?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, an independent audit of the previous government's failed insulation schemes show unacceptable levels of failings. We've acted to make sure poor quality installations are fixed. It is important that those responsible are held to account for the cost of remediating the issues. I do recognise that there are some complicated cases. I'll make sure a Minister looks at her constituent's case and that urgent action is taken.
Harriet Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Now, the Prime Minister says that he's concerned about the cost of living. So can he explain why he allowed his government minister to give permission to reform-led Worcestershire County Council to inflict that 9% council tax hike on my constituents?
Mr Speaker, Reform have to take responsibility for their decisions and they've moved out.
John Trickett.
Mr Speaker, two members of the same family in my constituency recently suffered serious health problems. The NHS was there for them, as you would expect, and they're both hopefully now on the road to recovery. But the recently departed honourable member had a different idea, that we should have an insurance-based health policy, an American-style policy, and that family, whose cost would have been $1.2 million, would have been crucified financially by what happened. So will the Prime Minister take the opportunity to say that our principles on the NHS are that it's universal for everybody, that wealth does not give you privileged access, and that this is a public service, not a private service?
Prime Minister.
I'm deeply sorry to hear about the case that he raises. We are the party of the NHS and we will always fight to ensure that it remains free at the point of use. Mr Speaker, we inherited an NHS on its knees, but we are seeing progress. Waiting lists are down, patient satisfaction is improving. We got the best ambulance response times for half a decade. There's much more to do, but we're delivering the investment that's needed, and it was opposed by who? The Tories and the now departed Reform.
John Lambert.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My constituent, Susan, suffered horrific, unimaginable, lifelong injury from a pelvic mesh implant. She lost her business, her marriage, her health, and lives in constant 24-hour pain. I'd like to congratulate the new Minister for Public Health on her appointment after her tireless campaigning on this issue, which has clearly been recognised. But more than 2 years after the Hughes report set out clear recommendations for redress, thousands of women like Susan are still waiting for a government response. So can the Prime Minister tell Susan and the thousands of other women like her how much longer they will have to wait?
Minister.
Could I thank her for raising Susan's case, and it's really important that she does so, and I'm deeply sorry for the enduring harm that patients have suffered. Ministers have met campaigners and the Patient Safety Commissioner to discuss their recommendations, and I can assure her we will provide a full response to the Hughes report recommendations at the earliest opportunity. And I'm happy for ministers to update her on the actions we've taken and to discuss the particular case that she's raised with me.
Dr. Alison-Gardner.
I recently met with Graham and Malcolm, who bravely shared their lived experience of addiction to monkey dust, a synthetic cathinone causing significant problems in Stoke-on-Trent. They shared their challenges to recovery caused by a lack of joined-up working between local services, including mental health and housing. I am now setting up a task force to address these gaps and to learn from excellent local projects such as Sphere. Will the Prime Minister meet with me to discuss how, together, as a country, we can tackle this pernicious drug?
Can I thank her for her work? She's right to highlight the growing threat posed by dangerous synthetic drugs. Alongside deploying new detection methods at the border to seize drugs, we're investing in better mental health support and drug addiction treatment with almost 26 million for Stoke-on-Trent. I'll ask the Health Minister to discuss her important work with her.
Pete Fortune.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as we move towards the Easter recess, I'm sure the Prime Minister's thoughts are turning to the miracle of resurrection. But constituents in Bromley and Biggin Hill have asked me to resurrect something, and that is cash in shops. 1 in 7 shops in the last year has moved to a cashless, which risks leaving behind those on low income or the elderly. And indeed, we've heard today of the risk of moving to digital devices for our economic liberty, as mobile phones could be lost or stolen or other. So what is the Prime Minister doing to ensure that nobody is left behind in a cashless society?
Well, it is really important that nobody is left behind in a cashless society. The vast majority are moving online, but we need to remember that some don't want to or can't, and we have to make sure there's provision in place for them as well, and I'm grateful to him for raising that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government has shown that it takes seriously the issues of justice and violence against women and girls. In my constituency, I have been made aware of a case where 2 children of a convicted paedophile have been trying to change their surname but can't because both parents have to agree. They are caught in a trap not of their own making. Will my right honourable friend agree to meet with me and all the relevant minister to hear how the legal system is denying justice to these children and what we can do about it? Thank you.
Can I thank him for raising this? And it is shocking and horrifying to hear what these children have to go through. I'm absolutely clear in my mind that should not be happening. And I can inform you, I've instructed the Justice Ministers to look at what they can do. They are going to review the payments and see what else they can do. And so I'm really pleased he's raised this, so we can now act on it, and I'll make sure that he gets the meeting that he's asking for.
Ian Duncan Smith.
Mr. Speaker, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps are responsible worldwide and here in the United Kingdom for the rise of anti-Semitism, inciting extreme Islam attacks, and at the same time attacking dissident Iranians and British citizens, as well as fomenting all sorts of hate marches. A very simple question. We are now at war with Iran, whether we like it or not. But the reality for us, therefore, is that we have never dealt with this organisation. And I simply ask the Prime Minister, doesn't matter, it's not party political, I simply ask him, can he make the decision now that they will proscribe this brutal bunch of thugs and send them packing or arrest them and put them in jail? Now, right now, get rid of this organisation.
I thank him for raising this, and it is really important and serious. He knows that we've sanctioned the IRGC in its entirety, and we've posed over 230 sanctions since coming into office. The existing prescription powers are not designed for a state organisation, but we do keep this under review, as did the last government.
Sarah Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 16th of July 2005, Private Leon Spicer and Private Philip Hewitt, both from Tamworth, and Second Lieutenant Richard Shearer from Nuneaton, were tragically killed in Iraq. More than 20 years on, our communities continue to remember their service and reflect on the ultimate sacrifice that they made. The Staffordshire 3 group, chaired by Anthony Firth, has worked tirelessly to fundraise for a memorial, which is due to be unveiled next month, and to which the Prime Minister is, of course, warmly invited. Will the Prime Minister join me in paying tribute to these 3 brave men and in commending the Staffordshire 3 group for their dedication in ensuring that their legacy is never forgotten?
Can I thank my honourable friend for the invitation? And can I join her in paying tribute to Private Leon Spencer, Private Philip Hewitt, and Second Lieutenant Richard Shearer? Their bravery and sacrifice in defence of our values will never be forgotten. I'm delighted to hear a memorial will be unveiled. Can I also pay tribute to all those serving today in the Middle East, shooting down threats from our allies and protecting our people.
Iqbal Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I also associate myself with the Prime Minister's remark about the attack on the Jewish community in Golders Green. There is no place for hatred, anti-Semitism or violence of any kind against individuals. Mr. Speaker, an independent panel of senior judges found no basis for misconduct proceedings against the British Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, King's Counsel. Yet reports suggest that elements within the court's governing body are seeking to disregard those findings, while ICC officials continue to face external pressure and sanctions. Therefore, given the UK's commitment to the rule of law and as a human rights lawyer himself, what steps will the Prime Minister set out to defend the independence of the ICC and to support British nationals carrying out international judicial roles?
Prime Minister.
I'm not going to comment on the internal proceedings of the court. As he knows, we support the court. We are party to the treaty and there are legal obligations that flow from that.
David Burton-Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my constituency of Southend Western Lee, we have a cohesive and diverse community with a significant Jewish population and a thriving Muslim community and many others from various different backgrounds, all living together and supporting each other. I was therefore appalled to learn of the arson attack against the Jewish community in Golders Green this week, and I'm deeply concerned at the Shadow Justice Secretary's outrageous comments last week about the community iftar in Trafalgar Square, seemingly supported by the leader of the opposition. Can the Prime Minister assure me and my worried constituents that he and his government will do all they can to stamp out hate and hate speech in our communities?
Can I say again what a shocking anti-Semitic attack it was in Golders Green and be absolutely clear that an attack on British Jews is an attack on all of us. And Mr. Speaker, on Monday morning I met British community, Jewish community leaders to talk through what we could do on ambulances, on security and on the social cohesion plan. Can I also say this? I was really struck by the fact that the Jewish community came out last week against the comments of the Shadow Justice Secretary, standing in solidarity with Muslims who wanted to pray in Trafalgar Square. And equally, on Monday, at the Eid event we had, Muslims stood in solidarity with our Jewish community. That is Britain, contrary to what the Shadow Justice Secretary said last week, supported by the leader of the opposition. That is how far they've fallen.
Mr. Speaker, Thames Water is lurching from crisis to crisis. Last year, it was let off record fines for pumping sewage into our rivers by Ofwat. It is allowed to do so under rules that are laid out in the Water Act of 1991. Will he consider scrapping those rules to stop Ofwat letting water companies off the hook?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I thank him for raising this? And it is deeply concerning, and we're looking at what more we can do because it's been too much of too concern for too long, and so we need to act.
Thomas.
Mr. Speaker, as the COVID inquiry graphically laid bare last week, the NHS was starved of the investment it needed under the party opposite. Nowhere more so than at Northwick Park Hospital, whose brave and extraordinary staff worked round the clock during COVID, looking after many of my constituents. Given the very welcome substantial investment that the government has committed to improve the NHS, will my right honourable friend encourage the Health Secretary to support plans for a new intensive care unit at Northwick Park?
Prime Minister.
The COVID report is a stark reminder, Mr. Speaker, of the extraordinary efforts of health workers to keep this country safe. We are delivering record investment and reform that our NHS needs. Whilst decisions about local infrastructure are made by integrated care boards, I'll make sure that he gets a meeting with the Minister to discuss his particular care. Today, Mr. Speaker, NHS satisfaction rates have risen for the first time since the pandemic. That is the difference that a Labour government is making.
Neil Shrewsbury-Hurst's final question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On the 21st of November of last year, Robert Clancy, a hugely valued and much loved member of my staff, took his own life. He was 29. While successive governments have done a great deal to deal with the scourge of suicide in this country, there is much more that can be done. Will the Prime Minister personally commit to meet with me to discuss how we can prevent others experiencing the unimaginable pain that Rob's family and friends have endured?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for raising the case of Robert Clancy? We are happy to work across the House on all that we can do in relation to suicide. I'm pleased that we've been able to put in place a strategy. That is the action of this government, but it needs to be the action of all of us. And I'll make sure he gets the meeting that he is asking for, and thank him again for raising this case. It's really important that he does so.
Please, Prime Minister's questions. Point of order.
Well, that there a sombre end to Prime Minister's questions today, which started off with the Prime Minister talking about his solidarity with the Jewish community following the attacks on those ambulances in North London earlier this week on Monday. A bit of breaking news during Prime Minister's questions. The UK and Turkey have signed a multi-billion-pound air defence deal. In a statement, the Ministry of Defence says that the new contract covers UK-based training for Turkish pilots and ground crew as Turkey moves towards operating its first batch of British-built jets. Defence firms including BAE Systems and Rolls-Royce will supply components and training equipment. So that breaking news in the last half an hour. Right, let's cross to our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, to get his verdict on Prime Minister's questions. A bit dry today, Sam? Kemi going in on oil and Keir Starmer coming back with legalese?
Yeah, I never like to review PMQs as not a blockbuster, but it wasn't one of those special ones that will live in the memory.
No.
Kemi Badenoch was asking about drilling in the North Sea. It was quite a rabbit hole question. Keir Starmer was responding with he's talking about the legislative framework for the way that you need to make. I have to say, if one thing will endure from today, it was the image of Keir Starmer with his head in his hands. I think he was quizzical about how many about the questions that Kemi was asking, but sometimes the image, like David Lammy, you can see sort of slightly incredulous. Rachel Reeves, 4 fingers, both sets of 4 fingers on his forehead, looking down. I think he is intending to make sort of his exasperation with Kemi Badenoch clear. Sometimes just a still image can endure in the memory, ends up not necessarily being helpful. We've all pulled a face on telly and it's ended up going wrong. Jane, I don't know about you, I certainly have.
Oh, well, don't even get me started. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because the context of why he had his head in his hands may well be forgotten, but that could be an image that we see on the front pages of tomorrow's papers.
I've already forgotten it. One more thing from Prime Minister's questions. There was a sort of preview from Keir Starmer about big announcement coming up later. He confirmed a moratorium on donations in cryptocurrency to political parties. We're hearing about this through the afternoon. Big report out about our political system, financing and donations, and that's one of the big conclusions. He confirmed it in the House. We didn't know the government were going to do that formally. We just had it in PMQs.
Yeah, now we're going to be hearing, I think it's Steve Reid is going to be standing up and talking about that. In fact, he is standing up right now, so I think we can cross to it. Let's cross to Steve Reid.
About the evolving threats we must contend with from those who wish to disrupt our democracy for their own gain and their own twisted purposes. We already have a strong toolkit to detect, disrupt and deter interference, and we are strengthening this through our Representation of the People Bill and
EasyJet Holidays Big Orange Sale is now on. Get up to £500 off package holidays. Book now. Search EasyJet Holidays. Get out there.
What was he saying?
Disregard from the original process when it comes to the changes in local government in Sussex affecting my constituents and indeed yours, Madam Deputy Speaker. Decisions apparently taken on a case-by-case basis, but can I point to the Secretary of State that outside today exactly this kind of political gerrymandering is what people are saying is happening here in Sussex, absolutely what he's seeking to protect. Could he undertake something in the House to my constituents and wider in Sussex, how they should have confidence in this process?
Thank you. Yes, the original proposals that we had for Sussex, none were considered financially viable, ultimately. So we are reopening the consultation, and she and indeed her constituents will be able to comment on the new proposals.
Roshanara Ali.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Rycroft review and in particular the Secretary of State's commitment to take action on crypto donations, as well as the cap on foreign donations of overseas donors. I want to draw the Secretary of State's attention to the comment in the report where the Rycroft review states that the debate on social media seeks to exacerbate division and increase polarisation with a view to simply destroying the capacity of the UK to function as a well-governed state. This is chilling. What we need, alongside the other proposals that the Secretary of State is talking about, is action to tackle deepfake and disinformation that is making it more and more dangerous for candidates to operate in our democracy. Will this we are regulators, including power Ofcom, as well as the electoral is taking rapidly, not delay.
Yeah, I thank you for her question. It's very important, and of course many people who care deeply about democracy itself have raised very similar concerns. The review makes proposals around deepfakes and the need for transparency about the origins of any content that appears online. We will provide a detailed response to the recommendations and she and other members will have the opportunity to take part in debate and scrutiny about those as we work through the legislation.
Bobby D.
And particularly action he's taken on cryptocurrency. But can I urge him to go further on corporate donations? There was a report earlier this week by Centax that revealed that as many as 1 in 4 donations from corporate entities are essentially opaque. They put this down to the reliance on personal rules, and they make a series of recommendations. So can he commit to also looking at the recommendations in that report and making sure we tighten this up so people can't simply circumvent the rules by donating via British companies?
Secretary of State.
Well, the bill itself, the review that we have in front of us today, already propose action to recognise the concerns. We need to companies, for instance, that can be used to funnel in dark money. We have no idea where that is coming from. There are legitimate states who are seeking to weaken and undermine our country by undermining our democracy.
Deputy Speaker. In his excellent report, Mr. Rice, the amplification of divisive content on social media. Yesterday, my committee heard from TikTok, Meta and X how in each case the design of their algorithm is determined by a foreign billionaire with a political agenda. And certainly when it comes to Mr. Musk, an agenda which does not reflect our democratic values. He has called for civil war in the UK. So unlike traditional press, social media algorithms are hidden, inaccessible, and they use personal data to target content, as Rycroft observes. So will the Secretary of State consider whether political bias in algorithms constitutes a donation in kind? And will he work with colleagues to address the algorithmic advertising research and transparency failures which our committee gave detailed proposals about in its report last July?
Secretary of State.
I thank her for her question, and I did listen carefully to part of the proceedings of the Select Committee yesterday, and with great interest. And we're grateful for the contribution she and her committee are making to this debate. I should say, in response to her point, that this legislation is not intended to target any one individual or indeed state. It's about putting in place safeguards against growing threats wherever they may arise from.
I think the government is very wise and closed the potential loophole that somebody might make a giant donation between today and the conclusion of the legislative process. But I can think of at least one other poll, which hopefully the Secretary of State has also considered. If somebody is an elector living abroad and is going to be limited to £100,000 per donation, what about other members of his close family to whom he could channel indefinite numbers of packages of £100,000 apiece? What's to stop them making similar donations? Has he considered how this is actually going to work in practice?
Secretary of State.
I thank him for his question. Of course, any attempt to bypass existing laws or the provisions I've announced today would themselves be illegal, and we would seek to identify the ultimate source, and if any behaviours of that kind had been carried out, there would be necessary enforcement action to follow.
Jordan.
The measures announced today to tackle foreign interference in our elections, but will the Secretary of State link between wealthy donors by banning those firms holding government contracts?
Thank him for his question. The report is focused on stopping money from hostile states or other hostile individuals who are seeking to undermine our democracy, and that is the extent of the measures that I'm announcing today.
Adam Dodds.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Constituents have told me how worried they are about funding from the United States for right-wing UK think tanks and political parties. Recommendation 4 and 16 of the review would strengthen transparent lobbying groups, which can advance foreign influence. Can the Minister tell my...
Thank you for his question and in this very important as well. The Philip Croft in his review makes 17 detailed recommendations. We will respond to all of them line by line, and he and his constituent will have our clear view at that point.
Chris Finns.
Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for coming to the today and saying it's a really important statement. Like one of the Lib Dem speakers, I'm very concerned about the ability for shell companies to make political donations. Clearly, this isn't transparent, and this is rightly recognised in the Rycliffe review. So can I ask what steps the government will take to close this loophole, and crucially, and what the government will do to strengthen monitoring of donations?
Secretary of State.
I thank him for his question. It's a very important point because, of course, the ability of shell companies to exist as funnels for dark, dirty money and money entering and polluting UK politics is real. That is why we're taking these recommendations seriously, and we will come forward with amendments to the legislation intended to close those doors so that we can keep British elections free for British people.
Suella Braverman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm going to mention the elephant in the room. Earlier this month, a sitting Labour MP, the Honourable Member for East Kilbride and Strathaven, her husband, was arrested on suspicion of spying for China. She's subsequently been suspended from the Labour Party. It's also been reported that she received a donation from her husband's firm, presumably would be covered by the government's plans. In light of this live case, I don't expect any comment on that live investigation, but also the 16 lead Labour MPs and the KCPs and the Chinese Communist Party confirm that his measures announced today will apply equally to those members of his own party who find themselves compromised with the Chinese Communist Party.
Before the Minister responds, when we mention other colleagues in the chamber, we give them notice. So she's saying that she has done, and we obviously do not mention live cases either. Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I mean, as a former Home Secretary, she would, of course, know that I can't comment on ongoing investigations. The provisions of the legislation we'll be bringing forward, as indeed with all legislation, is that they apply without fear and favour to members of all parties, as indeed the bribery legislation applied to Nathan Gill, a traitor who was the leader of reform in Wales.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. At the time of the Boston Tea Party, the American colonists demanded no taxation without representation. So does my right honourable friend agree with me that we should instill a principle that there should be no ability to, in a game-changing way, influence representation without taxation? And could he elaborate a little bit more on the principles in his statement?
Secretary of State.
Well, I thank him for his question. Philip Rycroft has recognised the concern and proposed what I think is a proportionate approach to dealing with that, and I've accepted today the figure of £100,000 cap, a very generous level of funding. I think most reasonably minded people would agree for donations from British nationals who are living and paying their taxes overseas.
Zoe Franklin.
Deputy Speaker, and I'm grateful for the Minister's comments in the Chamber today, and the Rycroft report has come at a really important time. As a member of the Bill Committee, I look forward to working with the Government to ensure that all of the recommendations are put through. They are incredibly important. But I just want to go back to the comment made by my honourable friend, the member for Hazel Grove, regarding the importance of a report related to the US's interference in our democracy. And then ask the question off of that, what steps is the Government and the Defending Democracy Task Force taking to protect our democracy from foreign interference more generally before the Representation of the People Bill goes through this House? Thank you.
Secretary of State.
Well, the US, of course, is our closest ally. The provisions that we are making in this legislation do not target any one country or indeed any one individual. They are intended as a proportionate response to a growing threat, wherever that threat may arise.
Dodds.
Madam Deputy Speaker. I strongly welcome this report and the Government's speedy and decisive response to it. Now, evidence from Germany and from Moldova shows how online attempts of foreign interference can combine with real-life attempts of foreign interference in the run-up to elections. So ask him specifically whether I was right in hearing that the Government will be looking at a transparent protocol for dealing with information emergencies related to foreign actors in the run-up to elections. And secondly, is he aware that in countries where crypto interests have unfairly influenced elections, very often donations have been given in domestic currency? So will he look at that broader context? Thank you.
Secretary of State.
Thank you for her question. Of course, there are recommendations covering precisely the points she's raising. I have accepted the report in general terms in full. We will be responding in detail to each of the 17 recommendations, and I hope those will address the concerns she's just raised.
To Ellie Chowns.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I warmly welcome the Rycroft review and the Government's swift action set out today on crypto and on overseas donations, although I would like to see the Government go much further. In respect of the amendments that he said he will amend the Representation of the People Bill wherever necessary, as a member of the Bill Committee, I would love to see those amendments come forward while we are still in committee stage so that we can give them the line-by-line scrutiny. That is the normal practice of this House. He referred to that normal practice. Will he please pull out all the stops to ensure that that happens? And can I ask him specifically, on the point about stopping the spread of disinformation on social media, Philip Rycroft on page 47 refers to the significant benefits that could come from having a real-time online library of social media adverts so that we get that transparency, that light shone on how all sorts of actors are influencing people below the surface. Does he support Philip Rycroft's view on that, and will he act to bring forward amendment to deal with that particular problem?
Secretary of State.
Well, can I thank her for her and her party's support for the review. As a member, I thank her for her work on the Bill Committee as well, and she's quite right. We do need to make sure that when the amendments come forward, the Bill Committee at that stage has sufficient time, indeed the House has sufficient time to go through them in detail. I will respond, and the Government will respond to each of the 17 recommendations in detail, and I think that will be the most appropriate time to respond to the question that she's just raised.
Bill Brickell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And as an individual who's dedicated my life to tackling corruption in all its forms and the chair of the APPG on anti-corruption, can I thank the Secretary of State and the gallant member for Barnsley North for their commitment to addressing foreign interference in our politics, and also thank Philip Rycroft for his review. May I also thank the immediate measures that the government has announced today around crypto donations and the size of donations made by British nationals abroad. I think they are very welcome and very much needed. But can I press the Secretary of State on three particular questions? Firstly, to what extent can he assure the House that the Electoral Commission is sufficiently supported to be able to monitor and police the perimeter of the new announcements that have been made today? Secondly, can he confirm that contrary to the remarks from the Shadow Secretary of State, there was ample opportunity for political parties of all stripes to feed into this review? And thirdly, on Know Your Donor checks and the risk factors that are going to be introduced through this bill, there is a recommendation in this report that they are more aligned with the anti-money laundering requirements that have been in place for quite some time, either for banks or other financial services firms. Can he commit to working with other regulators, for instance the Financial Conduct Authority, to understand how those are best implemented working with parties?
Secretary of State.
Can I thank him for his personal engagement with this issue, and also for the work of the APPG that he chairs. It's made some very significant contributions, and we're grateful for that. We will, of course, ensure that the Electoral Commission has the resources they require to enforce changes as we're bringing them forwards. On his final point, the Defending Democracy Task Force exists to make sure that there is proper alignment across all the necessary regulators to ensure that we're keeping our democracy in this country free and safe.
Freddie Van Merk.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I welcome the Secretary of State's reference to the rights of British overseas electors and the cap on donations as a proportionate response. Yet their rights to cast their vote is constantly stymied by late arrivals of the post. While the Secretary of State is considering amendments to representation of the People's Bill, will he meet with me to consider my amendment that would address this issue and seek to secure the voting rights of overseas citizens?
Secretary of State.
Yeah, I am aware of that concern, and it's an important concern. I'm happy to make sure he gets an appropriate meeting to discuss it.
Joe Powell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I really welcome this report. It is game-changing, and I totally agree with the Secretary of State's logic that leaving a window open for dodgy money to flood into this country would have been totally irresponsible. So I welcome the swift action. My specific question is on recommendation 2 around company donations. Now, we've learned from the Premier League's attempt to enforce financial fair play that, unfortunately, revenue can be manipulated very easily. For example, in that case, with sponsorship allowing clubs to buy players that they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. So I welcome Rycroft's recommendation that we switch it to profit to ensure that only genuine make profit in this country can give donations. And I would ask the Secretary of State, as the government responds in full to the report, to take a close look at Rycroft's recommendation.
Secretary of State.
I thank him for his support. I mean, he's quite right. Philip Rycroft was very clear in his reasoning on this point. The objective is to prevent shell companies being set up to funnel dark money into British politics. It's not to prevent British companies who are just going through a difficult year or two from making donations themselves.
Gregory Campbell.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I welcome the review and the Minister's response to the general thrust of it? I'm looking at those who responded at the back of the review, and I'm glad to see the list of people who did. And we responded on behalf of the unionist community, and it's a good job we did, as no others seem to have done. But on the political donations in Northern Ireland, the Minister will be aware of Sinn Féin being able to funnel money from the United States into the Republic and then into Northern Ireland. This is an issue that we raised, and it's itemised on page 25. It is a concern that many people have. They already get millions of pounds from representation money for not coming here, of taxpayers' money, and in addition to that, they're now getting several millions from the USA via Dublin and into Northern Ireland.
Secretary of State.
I thank him for his and his party's engagement with the review. I hear his concerns. I think it's important that we continue to engage so that those concerns can be heard and, where appropriate, addressed.
Damien Griffith.
Speaker, I thank the Secretary of State for prompt action in banning crypto asset donations and in capping foreign donations. But the Rycroft Review also recommends banning foreign funded adverts and also recommends that all online adverts should have imprints to show who's paid for them. So can the Secretary of State explain when and how the government will take these recommendations forward?
Secretary of State.
I thank you for her question. He makes some really important points on that, which of course other members across the House have made previously. As I've said earlier in this session, we will be responding in detail to all of the recommendations, including points she's just raised.
Mike Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for his review and Secretary of State for the announcement. I'm particularly happy that we have this retrospective idea of applying it from today, because we don't know when the bill is going to come through. Could I encourage the Secretary of State to, both for crypto and for foreign donations, to consider extending that period of retrospectivity back to the previous general election?
State.
Oh, well, I thank him for his question. I'm not so sure there's that much precedent for going that retrospective.
Sobel.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to thank Philip Rycroft for meeting with me as Chair of the Fair Elections APBG and including some of my points and evidence in this absolutely excellent review. I'd like to thank the Secretary of State for including the donations cap, an issue I raised with the Minister when we met. My question refers to page 45 of, we talk about international best practices in France, which monitors foreign online politics today, not just to identify it, not just are we considering abilities and powers?
Keep this running now. I don't know if someone is. Right, let's stop this one. Thank you for joining me. Yeah, interesting. Not much action involved today, but one for the historical records. Yes. Okay. It's the end of this stream. Coming up to 20 to 2. It's chilly outside. I was going to go for a walk, and I may just leave it for today, do some reading indoors. Catch you soon, folks. Hope you're all well. Look after yourself.